We are having now a conversation with the president of Ecuador, Guillermo Lasso, so we will now be connecting very soon. Thank you so much for bearing with us. Buenos días, señor presidente. Muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros
Good morning,
hoy.
Doctor. Good morning, President. Thank you for being here with us. Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity that you have given to us today to speak about Ecuador before this prestigious audience. Thank you. We would like to speak about the economy of Ecuador and the Latin American economy. You have recently commented that Ecuador has returned to almost the normal stage after the pandemic. What has changed in the economy of your country? Just to bring in some context, just 1 year ago, just 5% of Ecuadorians had received 1 dose of vaccine. And there was a great concern in our people to get infected, to get the disease and die. There were a lot of restrictions to go out on the streets, curfews, the use of masks. There was no in-person work, and there was almost 0 people in their public transportation. 1 year after, with our government, we have been able to vaccinate 83% of the Ecuadorian population with a total of 2 doses. And 40% with 3 doses. And now we are in the process of vaccinating with the 4th dose. And we believe that we're going to be here for 1 more decade from the sequels of the pandemic. But we have sufficient inventory of vaccines. So this has helped your economy. Yes, indeed. It has aided the economy. Just 1 year ago, the economic perspective of the Ecuadorian economy was to grow by 2% of their GDP for 2021. With our administration, with just a couple of months since 2021, we have seen an economic growth closing by 4.2%, greater than we have forecasted. We have been able to take out of poverty more than 700,000 Ecuadorians, creating more than 3,000 employment. And just to give you a little bit of context, Ecuador had a fiscal deficit back in 2020 of 7 GDP, and we were able to drop it by 2021 to 4 GDP. And our projection for 2022 is 2% GDP. Unless we have high prices in oil, then the deficit could be less than 2%, 2 points. What would happen if there's a superávit? What is the plan, and what does that mean to your, or what can this translate into your political fiscal policies? Well, in a couple more days, in the month of June, it's going to be 1 year of this administration. We have saved several lives after the vaccinations. We've been able to rescue our economy. We have agreements with the International Monetary Funds. We have went through the review of the 4th and 5th agreement, and we believe that IMF in the month of June will send out funds of $1 million. And this will also bring funds from the World Bank, from the Japanese cooperation, and the French cooperation. Therefore, we believe that the Ecuadorian economy is living a good moment. The level of inflation is around 2.8% in Ecuador. And as everyone else knows, it is a country that we use the dollar currency. Now, what is our plan going forward? Our plan in the creation of employment is to promote investment from the private sector and in the private sector. In the private sector, we have endorsed in 1 year of administration agreements for the investment of $50 million which is 5 points of GDP. The industrial, agriculture, tourism, and service sector, or each one of the sectors where there's going to be different investments. You just mentioned that the high price of oil has helped Ecuador. But with the war in Ukraine, we have seen how we have lost in very important markets. What has been the impact or the effects in Ecuador from the war? In the first place, I need to express as president of Ecuador is that this war has created a lot of unrest and it has been completely absurd. After a pandemic, when we have seen the weaknesses that we see in the world, we live in times of vulnerability. We have come out of a pandemic and moved immediately into war, which has no sense. Regarding the economy, this is a currency that has a coin with two sides. One is the public economy that exports petroleum. And of course, we do see some benefits to Ecuador. The other side of the coin is the private economy. There has been restrictions in the export of banana and flowers to Ukraine and Russia. Despite this situation, the total amount of private export, non-petroleum related, in the world has increased in the first quarter of the year 2022 above the average compared to the 2019 pre-pandemic figures. And that is something that it makes us feel highly motivated. In the first quarter of 2022, there has been an increase in sales in the private sector from $37.5 billion to $40 billion. That means that we have closed above the pre-pandemic figures. And we have very dynamic sectors. For example, the tourism that have grown by 30%, which is a large figure. The export sector, as I mentioned before, with products such as shrimp. In comparison to 2019, we have seen a double-digit growth. Higher than 30%. We have become the main producer of shrimp in the world. In banana, we have sector or production, we have seen growth despite of war. Yes, Anne. Your President, you're talking about the success of Ecuador, but the fiscal deficit has improved. But the global inflation in other countries has surely had an impact. We see the social protest and what's happening in Sri Lanka. Are we close to a debt crisis of emerging economies? Is this a concern? I do not perceive it this way. The concern is that global inflation could have an impact all of the different raw materials exported by Ecuador, specifically agricultural product. There has been an increase in the raw material. And we should, and we are going to put all of our efforts that the impact of the global inflation will not have a direct or negative impact in our end users here in Ecuador, speaking about the homes. Here in Ecuador, we do not see a risk of a default. We have seen that with all of the positives notes that I've just mentioned, we have seen better years in Ecuador, and we will continue to see those better years as we perceive 2022. So the impact of global inflation will not have an impact in the increase of agricultural products, as I mentioned. That's going to but I don't see a risk of default in Latin America. Your economy continues to improve. You have done a lot during your administration, but you've also been facing political crisis, problems in the National Assembly. We have seen that there's been a cost in the bond market. What is your message to the investors that have set their eyes on Ecuador? Yes, it is true that we have a security problem. Ecuador, for the first time, is before a problem that has impacted the countries of the region, which is organized crime and drug dealing gangs. But we are not alone in this. We have the support of the United States of America, Israel, the UK, Colombia, that as good friends and neighboring countries have supported us in a fight that it's not easy to tackle, that it will take time. However, we believe that we are at a phase where we have to set forth what needs to be done to reduce the levels of violence.
This is a reality that countries like Colombia and Mexico have lived before. And if we look into history, we can see that these countries have not postponed their development and opening to the world because of these reasons. We have an open economy for the world. We say more Ecuador in the world and more world in Ecuador. And we are about to formally finish a free trade treaty with Mexico that will allow us to tap into the Pacific Alliance by the end of the year. We are initiating negotiations with China for a free trade commerce with South Korea. I just came from Israel. I just signed an MOU. And with the United States, we are carrying out efforts for a fair and just trade. And I believe this is part of this policy. More Ecuador in the world and more of the world in Ecuador. When we say more world in the Ecuador, I refer to investments. We have closed $39 billion in projects for hydrocarbon, minerals, electricity or power, energy, telecommunications, and infrastructure. And you can see that in EcuadorOpenForBusiness.com. Again, EcuadorOpenForBusiness.com. Yes, thank you for the audience. Yes, for your audience. And I want to tell all, close to 50% of my working time is dedicated personally to help foreign investors that see Ecuador as a beam or beacon in America, as a country of opportunities. Mr. President, you spoke about the relations with the United States. Today, you met the First Lady, Joe Biden, and this week you spoke to Joe Biden, the President. You spoke about a great conversation you had. What are you expecting from the Summit of the Americas next month? Maybe President López Obrador and Wilson Ari are not going to attend. Allow me to say that Ecuador is going to be present. Ecuador is going to be there, and we are carrying out all the efforts in order to contribute to a greater and higher assistance of Latin America's countries. Well, with President Biden, we had a very amicable conversation. United States and Ecuador's relations are and have been traditionally excellent relations, a very lengthy relation. And I believe that the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles is the right opportunity for Ecuador so we can meet in person with President Biden, embrace each other, and that embrace represents the love that we feel from Ecuador towards United States and vice versa. And we can speak about what we share. We have the same vision on how
que
to
no es
promote
sino a
a
través de una
post-pandemic
profunda
economy.
inversión en infraestructura,
We need
como lo
a
ha dicho
deep
el presidente
investment in
Biden.
infrastructure,
Lo que
just
yo le he
like
dicho es
President
que
Biden
infraestructura en
mentioned.
Ecuador
What I say is
significa
that infrastructure
invertir
in
en agua
Ecuador
potable,
means investing in
invertir
drinkable water,
en
investing
servicios sanitarios.
in health
Probablemente en
systems.
Estados Unidos
Maybe in the
infraestructura
United
es
States, investing in
mejorar algunos
infrastructure
aeropuertos,
means
algunas autopistas,
maybe
pero
improving
países como el
highways or
Ecuador
airports. But countries
requiere
like Ecuador,
invertir
for
en
example,
sectores tan
require
básicos
that
en el siglo
investment
XXI como
in
agua
basic
potable y
sectors
alcantarillado,
for the
que es
21st century. For
fundamental
example,
para
drinkable
luchar
water and
contra la
sewage. And this
desnutrición
is
crónica
important so we
infantil,
can
que
fight
es uno de
the
los
child
principales
chronic
programas de mi gobierno.
malnutrition. And
Entonces
this
yo
is one
tengo
of the main
ilusión de
problems
ir a
from
la
my
Cumbre de las
programs from
Américas
my government.
y conversar
I am
personalmente
excited
con
to
el
assist
presidente
to the
Biden
Summit of the Americas
y le
and
puedo
speaking to
anticipar que en
President
la
Biden.
conversación
And I can let
telefónica
you know that
compartimos
our
visiones
phone
comunes.
conversation
Nos ha
displayed
mencionado
common
también que la
visions.
próxima semana va a tener
Well,
un
you
año de
said
presidencia,
that
¿no? ¿Qué
next
espera
week you'll be
en el
celebrating
segundo
1
año?
year in
¿Cambios
your
en su
post.
gobierno, en
What
su
do you
gabinete
expect for
también?
your second year? Are we going to see changes in
Mire,
your
en primer
government or
lugar,
cabinet, maybe?
como le dije, en el primer
Well,
año
in the
cumplimos
first
dos
place,
objetivos:
well,
salvar
for my
vidas
first year,
y
we
salvar la
accomplished two
economía.
goals, saving
La
lives and
estabilidad
saving the
económica
economy.
es un bien
The
público,
economic
es un bien
stability
común.
is a
Y eso
public
ya lo hemos alcanzado en el
asset.
primer
It's a
año de
common
gobierno.
asset, and this was
Y con la
achieved
vacunación,
throughout the first year.
Ecuador se ha convertido en
And
un
with the
ejemplo
vaccination,
en la
Ecuador has
región,
become
y
an
perdone
example
que
in
lo
the
diga, en el
region.
mundo,
And
de
I'm
cómo
sorry to
manejar la
say that, but
pandemia.
in the world, on how
Ahora,
to
en el
manage the
segundo año,
pandemic. Now,
tenemos que,
in
una vez
the
que hemos
second
puesto la casa
year,
en orden,
once
llevar
we have
adelante un
cleared and
proceso de
ordered the
inversión
house, then
en
we need to
infraestructura
push
con
an
inversión
investment
directa
process,
del sector público
investment in
por cerca de
infrastructure with
1.800
the
millones de
public
dólares
sector, close
y
to
luego
$1.8
promover
billion.
inversión privada.
And then we need to
Como le
promote the
digo,
private
tenemos
private
proyectos en
investment. As I
hidrocarburos
mentioned, we have projects
donde nuestro
for
objetivo es
hydrocarbon,
duplicar la
and the
producción
goal is
petrolera
to
en el mediano
double
plazo,
the
proyectos en
oil
minerales
investment in the
donde queremos
short to medium
incrementar las
term. We
exportaciones de
want to
minerales. El
increase
Ecuador
the
tiene
mineral exports.
reservas
In
en
Ecuador,
minerales
we have
tan grandes
mineral
como las de Perú
reservoirs that
o
are
como las
as
de
big
Chile
as the ones in
y
Peru or
queremos
Chile.
desarrollar, llevar a
And
cabo
we
todos
really
estos
wanted to
proyectos
develop
y
these
esa
projects.
inversión va a
And
generar
that
empleo y
investment is going
oportunidades
to
también
create employment
para la,
as well as
la pequeña
opportunities
empresa, la mediana
for
empresa,
the
para la
SMEs,
mujer ecuatoriana, para los jóvenes
for
ecuatorianos.
women
Entonces
and
nos
young
vamos a
adults
enfocar
in
mucho en
Ecuador.
inversión
And we are going
con
to
un objetivo:
focus on investment with just one
generar
goal,
empleo.
to create employment.
Señor presidente, le agradecemos por
Mr.
esta
President, I
conversación.
would like to
Muchísimas
thank you for
gracias.
this
Un honor
conversation.
tenerlo aquí.
Thank you. It's an honor for me to have you here in Bloomberg and New
Muchas
Economy.
gracias, muy
Thank you.
amables, y les
Thank
recuerdo
you. Very kind.
que Ecuador
Again,
los recibirá todos los inversionistas
please
del
remember
mundo
that
con
Ecuador
los
is
brazos
with
abiertos
open
para
arms, receiving
poder
all the
hacer
investors
alianzas
from the world so we
estratégicas
can create
de mutuo
strategic
beneficio.
partnerships
Un
for the
abrazo
mutual
para
benefit of
todos
everyone.
ustedes y que Dios los bendiga.
God bless you.
Gracias.
Thank you.